The dogs found his scent first. Noah Ramsey heard them before he saw the torches, a ragged chorus of baying hounds cutting through the sea fog, closer with every labored breath he dragged into his lungs. His boots slid on wet stone as he scrambled along the cliff path, one hand pressed to the wound in his side, where a crossbow bolt had grazed him 2 days back, the other clutching the tattered remains of a cloak that had once marked him as a soldier of the Ashford levy. Now it only marked him as a man worth 40 silver crowns, dead or alive, for the crime of refusing to put a torch to a barn full of orc children. Behind him, past the last bend in the trail, lantern light bobbed and swelled. Voices shouted his name like a curse. "Ramsey, you can't outrun horses, boy. Come out and it'll go easy." It would not go easy. He had seen what happened to deserters when they were dragged back in chains. He would rather go over the cliff into the black water below than let Captain Varick's men take him alive. The path bent sharply around an outcrop of black rock, and there, hunched against the cliffside like something the sea itself had spat up and forgotten, stood a squat stone building with a sagging roof and a single lit window. Old monastery stones, weathered pale by centuries of salt wind, patched here and there with newer timber, a goat pen, a well, smoke curling from a crooked chimney. Noah did not have time to weigh his choices. He threw himself at the door and pounded on it with the flat of his fist. "Please," he gasped, voice cracking. "Please, I mean no harm." The door wrenched open before his knuckles struck it a third time, and Noah found himself staring up, because she was a full head taller than him, even barefoot on the threshold, into the face of the most striking woman he had ever seen in his life. Her skin was a deep mossy green, weathered by wind and sun into something like old bronze. Twin tusks, small and neat, pressed against a full lower lip. Black hair was bound back in a thick braid shot through with a single streak of gray, and her eyes, amber and sharp as a hawk's, took him in from head to boot in the space of a heartbeat. She wore a fitted leather bodice laced tight over a dark woolen dress, the sleeves rolled to her elbows to bare forearms corded with muscle, and in her right hand she held a woodcutter's axe as though it weighed nothing at all. "A human," she said flatly, "bleeding on my doorstep in the middle of the night." "They're going to kill me," Noah managed. "Please, I'm begging you." Behind him, down the cliff path, the dogs baying sharpened into a frenzy. They had his trail. Whatever this woman decided, she would have to decide it in the next 10 seconds, because after that the choice would belong to Captain Varick and his rope. She looked past Noah's shoulder at the bobbing lights, weighed something behind those amber eyes that he could not read, and then reached out, seized him by the front of his ruined shirt, and hauled him bodily over the threshold as if he weighed no more than a sack of grain. "Karga Darkwolf hides from no man," she muttered, more to herself than to him, "but she does not hand a bleeding stray to Ashford dogs on principle." The door shut. A bar dropped into place with a heavy thunk. "There is no time to explain yourself," she said, already moving across the single room toward the hearth. "They will search. I will not lie to a hunting party's face, and I will not lie well if I must think of a lie in the next breath, so you will not be found lying, you will simply not be found." Noah did not understand until she dropped to her knees beside the hearthstones, seized an iron ring set flush into a wide floorboard he had not even noticed, and hauled upward. The board came free with a groan, revealing a black cavity beneath, an old monastery cellar, he would learn later, a hiding place the sisters who once lived here had dug for grain, or perhaps for themselves in worse days. "In," Karga Darkwolf commanded. He did not argue. He lowered himself into the dark, damp space, curling his long frame into a crawlspace barely large enough for a grown man, and looked up at her face framed by firelight one last time before she dragged the board back into place above him. Darkness swallowed him whole. He heard the scrape of a rug being pulled over the seam, heard her boots cross the floor, heard the bar lift from the door only moments before a fist began hammering against it from outside. "Open in the name of Ashford's garrison." "It is already open," Karga's voice came, muffled through the boards but unmistakably steady, almost bored. "You are simply too slow to notice the latch is not dropped." Noah lay in the dark, heart slamming against his ribs, and listened to the sound of his life balanced on the edge of a woman he had known for less than 2 minutes. Boots entered the room above him, several pairs. He recognized Captain Varick's clipped voice immediately, the same voice that had ordered him, 3 weeks past, to put fire to a village of orc families along the Kelder River, because the garrison had received word later proven false that raiders were sheltering there. "We're tracking a deserter," Varick said. "Human male, dark hair, wounded, answers to Ramsey. 40 crowns on his head, dead or alive. You've seen no one on this road tonight." "I have seen you," Karga said, "and I have smelled your dogs before I saw them. Beyond that, no. Mind if we look around, orc?" "I do mind," Karga said, and something in her voice made even Noah, hidden and terrified in the dark, feel a flicker of awe. "This is my home. I am widow to Karga Darkwolf, who held this land under the Cliffhaven Accord signed by your own king's grandfather. You have no writ to search a warded homestead, Captain, and I have no obligation to open my door to armed men in the dead of night merely because they are chasing shadows." A long pause. Noah pictured Varick's face reddening the way it always did when someone dared to hold ground against him. "You're harboring sympathies for deserters now. Careful, orc. Ashford doesn't forget insults easily." "Ashford has forgotten a great many things," Karga replied, "chief among them how to knock upon a woman's door like a civilized creature instead of a pack of curs. Take your dogs and your torches and search the cliffs, Captain. I promise you will find nothing in my house but an old woman's supper going cold while you waste her evening." There was a scuffle of boots, a low mutter of frustrated men, and then mercifully the sound of the door creaking shut again, the bar dropping back into place. Noah did not breathe until he heard the distant baying of the dogs moving on, fading down the cliff path toward the north, away from the house, away from him. Long minutes passed in silence before the rug above him was dragged aside and the floorboard lifted once more. Karga Darkwolf's face appeared above him, backlit by firelight, unreadable. "Come out, farmer," she said, "before you catch your death down there and become an even greater inconvenience to me than you already are." He realized later, not a farmer any longer in any way she could have known that night. She had simply guessed it from his calloused hands and the particular set of his shoulders. The way a man who has walked behind a plow carries himself differently than a man who has only ever walked behind a sword. But she was not wrong about what he had been before the war swallowed him, and somehow in the years that followed, the word she chose for him that first night became the truest name he ever answered to. He climbed out of the hole on unsteady legs, and Karga Darkwolf caught his arm before he could stumble into the hearth, her grip like an iron band, careful despite its strength. "Sit," she said, guiding him onto a low bench near the fire. "Let me see that wound before it decides to finish what Ashford's crossbow started." Noah sat because his legs would not have obeyed any other instruction, and watched this stranger, this widow, this woman who had just lied to armed men and risked her own home to save a fugitive she had known for the length of a held breath, cross to a shelf and take down a clay jar of something that smelled of crushed herbs and vinegar. "Why?" he asked when he trusted his voice again. "You don't know me. I could be exactly what they said, a murderer, a traitor." Karga knelt before him, pulling his shirt aside to examine the gash along his ribs, with hands far gentler than her earlier grip had suggested they could be. "I know Captain Varick," she said, "and I know what men like him call traitors. Usually it is anyone with the spine to refuse an order that turns his stomach." She glanced up, amber eyes catching his in the firelight. "Was I wrong?" Noah swallowed hard. "There was a village, along the Kelder. Varick had orders, bad information. It turned out later, no raiders there at all, just families, children, but orders all the same to burn it to the ground as a lesson. I refused. I struck an officer who tried to force the torch into my hand. Then I ran because I knew what refusing meant." Karga's jaw tightened, some old grief moving behind her eyes like a shadow beneath water. "The Kelder villages," she said quietly. "I know of them. My husband's cousin's clan wintered near there before Ashford decided the border needed clearing." She said nothing more about it, but Noah understood in that silence that he had stumbled, quite literally, bleeding onto the doorstep of a woman who had already paid some terrible price in that same war, long before he ever crossed her threshold. "You still haven't told me why," he pressed gently, wincing as she cleaned the wound. "Why risk your home for a stranger?" Karga sat back on her heels, studying him with an expression he could not name yet, not pity, never pity, something closer to recognition. "Because I have buried a husband who followed orders he should have refused," she said, "and I have no patience left for punishing men who finally learn to do otherwise. That is why, farmer. Now hold still, or this will hurt considerably more than it needs to." That was how the bargain began, though neither of them called it a bargain that first night. It became one 3 days later, when Noah, healed enough to stand, restless with the shame of taking charity from a woman who owed him nothing, insisted he could not simply stay beneath her roof for free. "I won't be a burden," he told her, standing in the doorway of the goat pen while she mended a fence rail with quick, sure strokes of a hatchet. "Let me work. I know grain, I know livestock, I know how to mend a wall and dig a well. Let me earn my keep or I'll take my chances on the road." Karga straightened, considering him with the same appraising look she'd given him the night she dragged him over her threshold. "You would be seen," she said. "Ashford's men still comb these hills." A human laborer suddenly appearing at a widow's homestead invites questions. "Then I'll work at night, or stay close to the house. I don't care, Karga. I won't sit idle while you feed me from your own stores." Something in his stubbornness seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded once sharply, the way a woman closes a deal she has already decided is fair. "Then here is my bargain, farmer," she said. "You will work this land as though it were your own, the goats, the garden, the wall that the winter storms keep breaking down. In exchange, you eat at my table, you sleep beneath my roof, and you tell no one what you are or where you came from. To any who ask, you are Noah, a drifter I hired off the coast road, nothing more. Do we have an understanding?" "We do," Noah said, and held out his hand the way men did to seal a deal back home, half expecting her to laugh at the small, human gesture. She did not laugh. She gripped his hand in hers, calloused palm against calloused palm, and held it a heartbeat longer than the bargain strictly required. "Then it is settled," she said. "Karga Darkwolf keeps her word, Noah Ramsey. See that you keep yours." The weeks that followed took on a rhythm neither of them had expected to find so easily. Noah rose before dawn to milk the goats and mend what winter had broken, and Karga worked beside him more often than not, her strength making short work of tasks that would have taken him alone twice as long, hauling stone for the garden wall, splitting firewood with an axe she wielded like it was an extension of her own arm, hoisting the old monastery's timber beams back into place when a storm loosened the roof. He learned in those weeks the shape of her grief. Her husband, Karga Darkwolf, had held this cliffside land under an old treaty between his clan and the human crown, a rare peace holding meant to prove orcs and humans could share a border without blood between them. He had died 3 winters past, not in battle, but in an accident on the cliff path during a storm, his horse spooked by lightning, the fall taking him before Karga even knew he had left the house. She told Noah this one evening while they sat together mending fishing nets by lamplight, her voice carefully flat in the way of someone who has practiced not weeping over an old wound so many times the practice has become its own kind of scar. "The clan expected me to remarry within the year," she said. "Land like this does not sit easily with an unclaimed widow in their eyes. But I told them I would sooner walk into the sea than be handed to another man, simply because the first one is dead." "And they accepted that?" Noah asked. Karga's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "They have not stopped trying," she said, "but so far none of them have proven worth the trouble of accepting." He should have heard the warning folded into that sentence. He would understand it fully only later, when Drask Ironjoe rode up the cliff path for the first time with 6 warriors at his back and eyes that measured Karga's homestead like a man measuring land he already considers his own. But that was still weeks away. For now there were only evenings by the fire, and the particular dangerous comfort of watching Karga Darkwolf really laugh, head thrown back, tusks flashing, the first time Noah made a fool of himself trying to milk a goat that clearly hated him. "You fought in a war," she said, wiping her eyes, "survived a crossbow bolt and a night hunt with dogs, and this is what undoes you, an old nanny goat." "She has opinions," Noah said with as much dignity as he could muster, hay in his hair. "Strong ones." "She has better sense than most men I have met," Karga said, still grinning, and reached out to pluck the hay from his hair with fingers that lingered just slightly against his temple before she caught herself and stepped back. Noah felt that small touch for the rest of the night, like a coal banked beneath ash, warm long after it should have cooled. It was on a night in early autumn, with the sea wind screaming against the monastery's old walls and rain lashing sideways off the cliffs, that the coal caught proper flame. Noah had gone out to secure the goat pen against the storm and returned soaked to the skin, shivering, his lips faintly blue. Karga took one look at him in the doorway and hauled him bodily to the hearth without argument, stripping the sodden shirt from his shoulders with brisk, efficient hands that had nothing gentle in their urgency and everything gentle in their intent. "Fool man," she muttered, wrapping a wool blanket around him, kneeling before the fire to build it higher. "You would let yourself freeze rather than leave a goat pen half-latched." "Couldn't leave them to the storm," Noah said through chattering teeth. Karga sat back on her heels, studying him in the firelight, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, the old scar along his ribs where her own hands had once stitched him closed, the stubborn set of his jaw even now, cold and miserable, that refused to regret the choice he'd made. "You are a strange creature, Noah Ramsey," she said softly. "You ran from an army that would have made you a monster, and now you would rather freeze than fail a herd of goats that do not even like you." "Somebody has to look after the things nobody else bothers to," Noah said. "Seemed like a decent way to spend a life, once I decided I wanted to keep having one." Karga was quiet for a long moment, firelight dancing amber in her eyes, and then she reached out and cupped his jaw in one broad palm, tilting his face up toward hers with a deliberateness that stole the breath from his lungs far more thoroughly than the cold ever had. "I have watched you work this land for 2 months," she said, voice low, "and I find I no longer think of you as a stray I took in out of spite for Ashford. I think of you," and here her thumb traced once slow along his cheekbone, "as something I would very much like to keep." Karga, Noah started, uncertain whether to hope or to warn her off from a foolishness he was certain he didn't deserve. "I'm not asking your permission, farmer," she said, and the ghost of her old wry humor returned to soften the edge of the words. "I am telling you what I intend. Karga Darkwolf does not ask twice for what she wants, but I find with you, I would rather you wanted it too." "I do," Noah said, before he could think better of it, before pride or fear or the memory of everything he'd lost could talk him out of the truth sitting plain and unguarded in his chest. "I have wanted it since you dragged me over that threshold by my shirt like I weighed nothing at all." Karga huffed something that was almost a laugh, low in her throat, and closed the distance between them. The kiss was not gentle, not at first. There was too much hunger banked behind 2 months of careful distance for gentleness. Her hand fisting in the wool blanket at his shoulder, tusks a careful, deliberate presence against his lip that only heightened the strangeness and the rightness of it all at once. Noah kissed her back with everything the cold and the fear and the loneliness of the last 3 weeks of running had carved hollow inside him, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Karga rested her forehead against his and let out a long, unsteady breath. "Well," she said, "that settles that question at least." "Which question?" Noah asked, still dizzy. "Whether I imagine the way you look at me," Karga said, "or whether you have simply been too much a coward to say so." "I'm no coward," Noah said, mock offended. No, Karga agreed, drawing back just enough to look at him properly, something soft and fierce both moving behind her eyes. You are not. That farmer is precisely the trouble. They did not rush what came after that night, though the fire between them no longer banked itself so carefully. Karga was not a woman who hid her wants once she had decided to stop hiding them. She pulled him into her bed within the week, unhurried and certain, guiding him with the same confident hands that split firewood and mended fences. And Noah gave himself over to her without reservation, grateful down to his bones that a woman like this, fierce, magnificent, feared by bounty hunters, and respected by her own clan, had looked at a fugitive farmer with nothing to his name and decided, of all the things she might have chosen, that she wanted him. But peace on a cliffside homestead never lasted long in that corner of the world, and the man who came to shatter it arrived on a gray morning 3 weeks later, riding a warhorse the size of a small barn, with 6 mounted warriors at his back and a voice that carried across the whole cliff like a thunderclap. Karga Darkwolf. Drask Ironjaw bellowed from the base of the path, not bothering to dismount. I have come to collect what should have been settled a year past. Noah, mucking out the goat pen, straightened at the sound and felt his stomach drop at the sight of the orc who swung down from his horse with the easy, arrogant grace of a man who had never once in his life been told no and made it stick. Drask stood nearly 7 feet tall, built like a siege engine, a scarred jaw and a single gold ring through one tusk marking him as clan champion. A title Noah would learn meant he had killed every rival who ever challenged him for it. Karga stepped out of the house wiping flour from her hands, and Noah did not miss the way her spine straightened, the way her jaw set like a woman bracing for a blow she had weathered before. Drask, she said, flat. You are not welcome on this land. This land belonged to Thragan, Drask said, striding closer, and Thragan is 3 winters dead. A widow does not hold clan land alone forever, Karga. The elders grow impatient with your refusals. I have come to make the offer plain one final time so no one may say I did not. You have made it plain a dozen times, Karga said. My answer has not changed. Drask's gaze slid past her shoulder, found Noah standing frozen by the goat pen, and something ugly and knowing crossed his scarred face. And this, he said slowly, is the reason I think. A human, Karga Darkwolf, widow of a clan champion, warming her bed with a human stray. He laughed, short and contemptuous. Does he know what happened to the last human who wandered too far into clan land uninvited? Does he know how quickly Ashford's coin turns former friends into corpses on a bounty board? Noah's blood went cold, but Karga stepped forward, putting herself between Drask and where Noah stood, her voice dropping into something dangerous and quiet that Noah had not heard from her before. Threaten him again, she said, and you will learn exactly how little the elder's patience matters to me compared to what I am willing to do to protect what is mine. Drask studied her for a long moment, then smiled, slow and unpleasant. Yours, he repeated. Interesting choice of word, widow. I will remember it. He swung back up onto his horse. The harvest gathering is in 3 weeks' time at Greywatch. All clan business is settled there before the whole of the border folk, human and orc both, as custom demands. I will bring my claim before the elders formally, Karga, and I will bring proof, if proof is needed, of exactly what or who you have been hiding beneath that roof of yours. He rode off with his warriors thundering behind him, and Karga stood watching until the last of them vanished around the cliff bend before she finally allowed her shoulders to drop. He knows, Noah said quietly, coming up beside her, or suspects at least. He suspects, Karga said. Suspicion is not proof, but Drask Ironjaw has never let something as small as the absence of proof stop him from causing trouble he intends to cause. She turned to look at him, worry plain in her amber eyes for the first time since he had known her. The gathering is dangerous ground for you, Noah. Bounty hunters attend. Ashford officials attend to keep the peace and collect what debts they can. If he means to expose you there in front of everyone, then I won't go, Noah said. I'll stay here, keep to the house. You cannot, Karga said grimly. Attendance is expected of every clan holding. My absence alone would be seen as an admission of guilt, would give Drask exactly the opening he wants to press his claim on this land in front of the elders while I am conveniently elsewhere. I must attend. And if I attend and you do not, questions will be asked about the drifter I hired who is suddenly too ill, too busy, too anything to stand at my side. Noah felt the walls of an impossible situation closing in around him. 3 weeks ticking down like a slow-burning fuse toward a fire he could not see any way to escape. "Then, what do we do?" he asked. Karga was quiet for a long moment, staring down the empty cliff path where Drask's dust still hung faint in the morning air. "We go," she said finally, "and we do not hide. Drask expects fear from us, Noah. He expects to walk into that gathering and watch us crumble the moment he lays his accusation on the table. I have spent 3 years refusing to give that man the satisfaction of seeing me afraid of anything. I do not intend to start now. Karga, if they recognize me." "Then they recognize a man who refused to burn children alive," Karga said fiercely, turning to grip his shoulders. "And if that is a crime worth hanging for in the eyes of Ashford's crown, then I will stand in that square and say so to every soul gathered there, human and orc alike, and let them decide for themselves what kind of world they wish to live in." Noah searched her face for any trace of doubt and found none. Only that same fierce, unshakable certainty that had dragged him over her threshold the first night they met. The certainty of a woman who had already decided, long before he ever proved himself worthy of it, that some things mattered more to her than her own safety. "All right," he said quietly. "We go." The 3 weeks that followed passed in a strange, suspended quiet, the two of them working the land by day and lying together by night with a new urgency, as though trying to store up enough warmth against whatever the gathering might take from them. Karga taught him what she could of clan custom, how a formal claim was raised and answered before the elders, how a challenge could be issued, and what it meant to refuse one, how deeply insulting it would be, in the eyes of every orc present, for Drask to publicly humiliate a widow before her own people. "There is one custom that may serve us," she said one evening, turning a whetstone slowly against the edge of her hatchet. "A binding claim. If a widow declares before the elders that she has already chosen a new mate of her own will freely, no clan elder may set aside that choice in favor of another suitor's claim, not even a champion's. It is the oldest law we have, older than the treaty with Ashford itself. Marriage by choice cannot be undone by force." Noah's heart stumbled. "You mean?" "I mean," Karga said, setting down the whetstone to look at him directly, "that if I declare you as my chosen mate before the gathering, Drask's claim on this land dies on the spot, no matter what accusations he tries to fling afterward. But it also means declaring, in front of every human official present, exactly who and what you are to me. There will be no hiding after that, Noah. No pretending you are merely a hired hand. Ashford will know precisely where to find their fugitive, sitting at my side as my husband. You would still choose that," Noah said slowly, "knowing what it costs." "I have already chosen it," Karga said simply. "I chose it weeks ago, farmer. I am only now telling you the price of admission." Noah crossed the room and knelt before her chair, taking her calloused hand in both of his the way he might once have knelt before an altar, though no altar he had ever known held anything half so precious as what sat before him now. "Then let them come," he said. "Let Ashford and Drask Ironjaw and every soul in Greywatch see exactly what I am, so long as I am that at your side." Karga's eyes glistened, though she blinked it away before it could fall, cupping his face in her free hand. "You truly are the most foolish, stubborn, wonderful man I have ever had the fortune to drag over my threshold," she said, and kissed him like a vow. The town of Greywatch sat where the cliff road finally descended to meet the harbor, a walled market town of gray stone and salt-bleached timber that swelled to 3 times its normal size during the harvest gathering, when clans from up and down the coast came to trade, settle disputes, and renew the fragile treaties that kept human and orc from each other's throats. Wagons and hide tents crowded the market square. Merchants hawked salted fish and woven cloth and iron tools beside orc traders selling furs and carved bone and clan-forged blades. Ashford's colors flew from the town hall alongside the banners of half a dozen orc clans, an uneasy truce made visible in cloth and paint. Noah walked beside Karga through the crowded square with his hood drawn low, heart hammering every time a soldier's uniform passed within 10 feet of him, but Karga's steady presence at his side, her hand occasionally brushing his, deliberate, grounding, kept the worst of the panic at bay. They found Drask Ironjaw waiting for them at the center of the square, near the old stone dais where the elders would hold formal proceedings that afternoon, exactly as Noah had feared he would be. Beside Drask stood a man in Ashford colors that made Noah's blood run to ice. Captain Varric himself arrived to oversee the peace at the gathering, a bounty poster rolled beneath one arm. "There," Drask said loudly, the moment Karga and Noah came within earshot, his voice pitched to carry across the crowded square. "There is the widow Darkwolf, and there, unless I am very much mistaken, Captain, is the human you have been hunting these past 2 months." The square went quiet in ripples, conversation dying as heads turned. Varric unrolled the poster with theatrical slowness, holding it up for the gathering crowd to see a rough charcoal likeness of Noah's face, the words deserter and traitor to the crown in bold letters beneath, and beneath that, 40 CROWNS, dead or alive. "Noah Ramsey," Varric said, and every eye in the market square fixed on Noah at once, humans and orcs alike, the whole of Greywatch's gathering crowd drawing close around them like a tightening noose. "Wanted for desertion, assault upon a superior officer, and treason against the crown of Ashford. Found, it seems, hiding beneath the roof of an orc widow with treaty land along the border." Varric's smile was thin and cold. "That complicates matters rather significantly, don't you think? A landholder under royal treaty, harboring a fugitive of the crown. That could see this whole homestead forfeited, widow, treaty, or no treaty." A murmur rippled through the crowd, humans muttering about traitors and orc collusion, a few orc traders shifting uneasily at the mention of treaty land at risk. Drask's smile widened, savoring the moment he had clearly planned for weeks. "I told you, Karga," he said. "I told you I would bring proof." Noah felt every eye in the square like a physical weight, felt the old, familiar instinct to run rising in his chest, but Karga's hand found his and gripped it hard, anchoring him in place. "Captain Varric," Karga said, and her voice rang out across the square with a clarity that silenced the muttering crowd. "Before you decide what my treaty land has forfeited, you will hear what I have to say, in front of every soul gathered here, human and clan both, as is my right under the Cliffhaven Accord your own king's grandfather signed with my husband's father." Varric's smile faltered slightly. "This isn't a clan matter, orc. This is a crown matter. A deserter is a man I have already claimed as my husband," Karga said, loud and clear, and the words landed on the square like a thrown stone into still water. Gasps, whispers exploding outward through the crowd. Drask's face went slack with fury, then rigid with fresh calculation. Varric blinked, momentarily wrong-footed. "Under the oldest law of my people," Karga continued, raising her voice further so it carried to the very edges of the square, to the elders now emerging from the town hall to see what commotion had gathered such a crowd. "A widow who chooses a new mate of her own free will cannot be denied that choice by any clan claim, any champion's challenge, or any outside authority. For marriage freely chosen is older than treaty, older than crown law, and sacred beyond the reach of bounty or politics. I choose Noah Ramsey. I have chosen him for weeks in my home before my hearth, and I choose him now before all of you as my husband. He is a wanted criminal." Varric snapped, recovering his footing. "Marriage or no, the crown's writ runs on treaty land as much as anywhere. Does it?" A new voice cut through the square, one of the clan elders, an ancient orc woman leaning on a gnarled staff, her tusks worn smooth with age, stepping forward from the gathering crowd with the unhurried authority of someone who had settled disputes for longer than Varric had been alive. The Cliffhaven Accord is quite clear on the matter of clan marriage law superseding outside claims on treaty land, Captain. I helped draft its renewal myself, 20 years past. Karga Darkwolf's choice of husband is not yours to challenge, nor Drask Ironjaw's, nor any bounty board's, so long as the marriage is freely made and properly declared. Which, she added, fixing Karga with a sharp, appraising look, she has now done before sufficient witnesses to make it binding beyond any doubt. This is absurd, Drask snarled, stepping forward, his hand dropping to the hilt of the massive sword at his hip. A human criminal cannot simply marry his way out of Ashford's law by hiding behind clan custom. He is not hiding behind anything, Karga said, rounding on Drask with a fury that made even the massive champion take an involuntary half-step back. He stood in that square in plain view of Captain Varric and every soldier here and did not run, Drask, though every instinct in him screamed to do so, because he trusted that what we built together was worth more than his own safety. Can you say the same of your courage, champion, or have you only ever proven it against men too weak to refuse you? The crowd's murmur turned, subtly but unmistakably, in tone, no longer simply scandalized whispering, but something closer to grudging respect rippling through the orc onlookers at Karga's words. A few low growls of approval from clan warriors who had clearly grown tired of Drask's arrogance over the years. Drask's face darkened with humiliation, the crowd's shifting mood not lost on him. His hand tightened on his sword hilt. "Then I challenge," he said, loud and sharp. "If the human is her husband, if he stands as her equal as she claims, then let him prove it. Champions challenge under clan law to settle the matter of this land's true worth, once and for all." Noah's stomach dropped. A duel against a 7-foot orc warrior who had killed every rival who ever faced him. He would not survive 30 seconds, and everyone in that square knew it, including Drask, who smiled with cruel satisfaction at the trap he had just sprung. But before Noah could open his mouth to accept the death sentence Drask had just handed him, Karga stepped between them, drawing her own hatchet from her belt with a single fluid motion, angling her body so she stood squarely between Drask Ironjaw and Noah, immovable as the cliff stones behind her home. "You will not touch him," she said, low and lethal. "If you wish to test whether Karga Darkwolf's claim on this land and this man is worth defending with steel, champion, then you may test it against me. I fought at Thragon's side before I ever kept his home. I have not forgotten how. A woman does not answer a champion's challenge on her husband's behalf," Drask snarled. "Show me the law that forbids it," Karga shot back, "and I will show you every clan record of women who have done precisely that when their mates were unjustly matched against a stronger blade. You know such law exists, Drask, because you have used it yourself to avoid weaker challengers you deemed beneath you. Do not pretend outrage now simply because it is inconvenient to your pride." The old elder woman spoke again into the tense silence that followed, her staff striking the ground once with a note of finality. "She speaks true. A champion's challenge against an outmatched mate may be answered by the stronger partner if both spouses consent to it. Is this your wish, Karga Darkwolf?" "It is," Karga said. "Noah?" the elder asked, turning her sharp old eyes on him, and Noah understood in that moment that his answer mattered, that this ancient custom required his consent as much as Karga's, that even here, even now, he was being treated as an equal partner in his own fate rather than a helpless bystander to be fought over. He looked at Karga, at the fierce, unshakable certainty in her amber eyes, the woman who had pulled him over her threshold and never once let him go, and found, to his own quiet surprise, that he trusted her with his life as completely as he had ever trusted anything. "It is," he echoed. The elder nodded once. "Then let it be settled by champion's challenge here, before all gathered as witness. Drask Ironjaw against Karga Darkwolf, for the matter of Cliffhaven land and the marriage claim upon it. Winner's word stands as final before this gathering. The crowd pulled back to form a rough circle in the market square, humans and orcs alike pressing close to watch, word of the confrontation already spreading beyond the square's edges, as people abandoned market stalls to come see what promised to be the talk of every gathering for years to come. Noah found himself pushed to the front of the crowd beside the old elder, close enough to see everything, too far to do anything but watch and pray. Drask discarded his cloak, rolling his massive shoulders, drawing his sword with the easy confidence of a man who had never once doubted the outcome of a fight in his life. Karga shed nothing, simply settled her weight, hatchet in one hand, a long belt knife drawn into the other, her braid swinging loose down her back as she faced him. "I will try not to scar that pretty land deed too badly when I win it, widow," Drask said. "You will try," Karga agreed, "and you will fail at both." They came together like a collision of storms. Drask's first swing was a testing blow, contemptuous almost in its lack of full force, and Karga ducked beneath it with a speed that seemed impossible for a woman her size, driving the flat of her hatchet into his ribs hard enough to stagger him back a full step. The crowd's collective gasp was audible even over the clash of steel that followed, Drask's contempt visibly evaporating, replaced by grudging, furious focus as he brought his full strength to bear. Noah watched, heart in his throat, as the two orcs traded blows that would have killed a lesser fighter in the opening exchange, Karga weaving beneath Drask's superior reach, using his own momentum against him, drawing blood from a shallow cut along his forearm even as his sword's pommel caught her a glancing blow along the temple that sent her staggering. "Karga!" Noah shouted before he could stop himself, and her eyes flicked toward him for the barest instant, just long enough to find him in the crowd, just long enough for something to steady in her expression, before she rolled beneath Drask's follow-up strike and came up inside his guard, driving her knife hilt into his throat with brutal precision. Drask choked, staggered back, sword arm dropping as he fought for air, and Karga did not hesitate. She swept his legs with a low kick that dropped his massive frame to the market square's cobblestones, and had her hatchet blade resting against his throat before he could so much as raise his sword again. The square fell utterly silent. "Yield," Karga said, breathing hard but steady, "or I finish this properly, champion, and we both know the elders will call it a fair kill under challenge law." Drask lay still for a long moment, humiliation and fury warring plainly across his scarred face, before he finally spat to the side and rasped, "I yield." Karga stepped back, lowering her weapon, and the market square erupted, not into violence, but into a roar of noise that Noah could not immediately parse, cheers and shouts and stunned exclamations from both human and orc onlookers alike, market gossip already forming in real time around him, the kind of scandal and spectacle that would be retold in every tavern and trading post along the coast for seasons to come. The orc widow who beat her clan's own champion in single combat to defend her human husband before the whole of Greywatch's harvest gathering. The old elder raised her staff for quiet, and slowly, gradually, the crowd settled enough for her voice to carry. "The challenge is settled," she declared. "Karga Darkwolf's marriage claim stands, unchallenged and unchallengeable, before this gathering and all clans represented within it. Cliffhaven land remains hers and her husband's, by right of victory and by right of law." She turned her sharp gaze on Captain Varric, who stood pale and clearly unsettled by the entire spectacle. "As for the crown's business, Captain, I believe you will find that a man legally married under binding clan law, residing on treaty-protected land, falls under considerably murkier jurisdiction than your bounty board accounted for. I would advise consulting with your superiors at length before attempting to enforce any writ here today, unless Ashford wishes to test whether the Cliffhaven Accord's protections extend as far as its signatories always claimed they would." Varric's jaw worked silently for a moment, clearly calculating the political cost of dragging a legally married man off treaty land in front of a crowd numbering in the hundreds, orcs and humans both, all of whom had just watched an orc widow best her own clan's champion in defense of that same marriage. "This isn't finished," Varric finally said, rolling up his bounty poster with sharp, angry motions. "Desertion charges don't simply vanish because of clan custom. Perhaps not," the old elder said mildly. "But perhaps, Captain, before you press the matter further, you might ask yourself how it will look to your own crown when word spreads. And word will spread, I promise you, faster than you can outrun it, that Ashford's soldiers tried to drag a married man from his wife's protected land at sword point, immediately after that same wife proved herself capable of besting a 7-foot clan champion without breaking a sweat. Some fights are not worth the cost of winning, Captain. I suspect you already know that, or you would not be hesitating now." Varric said nothing further. He turned on his heel and stalked off through the crowd, soldiers falling in behind him, and though Noah knew the matter of his desertion charges was not truly formally closed, some quiet part of him understood it would take more than one dramatic afternoon to fully clear his name with the crown. He also understood, watching Varric's retreat, that no bounty hunter in the region would come within a mile of Cliffhaven land again after today. Not with this story already spreading through the market crowd like wildfire. Not with the political cost of testing clan marriage law now etched into the memory of everyone who had witnessed it. Karga crossed the square to him through the dispersing crowd, blood trickling from the cut at her temple, hatchet still loose in one hand, and Noah did not care who was watching. He pulled her into his arms right there in the middle of Greywatch's market square, heedless of the fresh wave of whispers that swept through the onlookers at the sight. "You beat him," he said, half laughing, half in disbelief, hands framing her face to check the wound at her temple. "You actually beat Drask Ironjaw." "I told you," Karga said, breathless but grinning fiercely, tusks bright in the afternoon light. "I fought at Thragon's side before I ever kept his home. I did not forget how." She winced as his thumb brushed too close to the cut, then softened, leaning into his touch despite the sting. "Did you doubt me, farmer?" "Never," Noah said. "Not for one single second." Drask Ironjaw did not linger in Greywatch. Word reached them within the week, carried by traders passing along the coast road, that the humiliated champion had ridden north to his home clan, rather than face the mockery that had already begun following him from tavern to trading post. The tale of the widow who beat him bloody in front of half the border's clans, defending a human husband nobody had ever expected her to choose. Some tellings painted Drask as a fool who had underestimated her. Others, less kindly, suggested he would never live down being bested by a woman defending a man he had called weak. Either way, he did not return to Cliffhaven land, then or ever again, and the elders made it plain through informal channels that any future clan business regarding Karga Darkwolf's homestead would need to wait for a challenger with considerably more patience and considerably less arrogance than Drask Ironjaw had ever possessed. The matter of Noah's desertion charges took longer to resolve, though resolve it eventually did. The old elder, whose name Noah learned was Mother Yelka, took a personal interest in the affair that surprised him at first, until Karga explained that Yelka had lost her own son to a similar order refused and punished harshly, years past, and had never forgiven Ashford's military courts for it. Yelka used her considerable influence among the border clans to press the matter through proper channels testimony, gathered from soldiers who had served alongside Noah and witnessed Captain Varric's original order firsthand, corroboration that the intelligence behind the Kelder village burning had indeed been false. A formal clan petition submitted to Ashford's regional governor questioning whether a man who refused to commit an atrocity against innocent families should truly be hunted as a traitor to the crown that claimed to value justice. It took the better part of a year, letters passing back and forth along slow coast roads, testimony gathered and weighed by officials more concerned with political embarrassment than with justice. But eventually, quietly, without fanfare, in the dry language of an official pardon rather than any dramatic vindication, Noah Ramsey's name was struck from every bounty board along the border. He would never again need to hide beneath a floorboard from armed men, hunting him for the crime of refusing to become a monster. He and Karga marked the occasion the same way they marked most important things between them. Quietly, at home, on the cliffside land that had become, in truth as well as law, entirely his own as much as hers. It was nearly 2 years after that first storm-lashed night when Noah stood at the edge of the cliff behind their home, watching the sun sink into the sea in great streaks of gold and violet, the goat pen mended and sturdy behind him, the garden wall standing strong against whatever winter storms still came, and felt Karga's arms slide around him from behind, her chin resting against his shoulder. The warmth of her body solid and certain at his back the way it had become every evening for 2 years running. "You are thinking too loudly again," she murmured against his ear. "I can hear it from across the yard." "Just thinking how strange it is," Noah said, covering her hands with his own where they rested against his chest, "that the worst night of my life turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me." "Strange," Karga agreed. "But I have found in my experience that the worst nights often carry the best mornings hidden inside them, if a person is fool enough or brave enough to survive until dawn to find out." Noah turned in her arms to face her properly, the dying light catching the silver streak in her dark hair, the small, permanent softness that had settled into her expression whenever she looked at him now, so different from the sharp, wary appraisal of that first night, though the fierceness beneath it had never once dimmed. "I used to think I'd spend the rest of my life running," he said quietly. "Alone, looking over my shoulder. I never let myself imagine anything like this. A home, a wife, land that's actually mine to tend instead of borrowed or stolen or bled for. I never imagined someone like you would look twice at a man like me." "Then you imagine poorly," Karga said, cupping his face in both hands, "because I looked at you exactly once, farmer, bleeding on my doorstep with dogs at your heels, and I already knew. Karga Darkwolf does not hide from what she wants, and she does not let go of it once she has claimed it. I chose you that first night, whether either of us understood it yet or not. Everything since has simply been the two of us catching up to what I already knew." "And what's that?" Noah asked, though he already knew the answer, had known it for 2 years now in every quiet evening and every stolen touch and every fierce, unshakable choice she had made to keep him safe, to keep him close, to keep him hers. "That you are mine," Karga said simply, "and I am yours, and there is no bounty on this earth large enough, no champion strong enough, no crown powerful enough to ever change that again." The sea wind picked up around them, carrying the scent of salt and the distant cry of gulls settling for the night, and Noah kissed his wife on the cliff edge of the home they had built together from a fugitive's desperate knock and a widow's fearless refusal to hand him over, and understood, with a certainty that settled into his bones like the oldest kind of peace, that he was no longer running from anything at all. He had at long last arrived exactly where he was meant to be.